Percy wanted not just to kill the mouse but to squash it, so he ran in big, comical leaps, like a deer, stamping down with his heavy black work shoes. The mouse barely avoided Percy's last two jumps, first zigging and then zagging. It went under the door with a final flick of its long pink tail, and so long, stranger, it was gone. "Fuck," Percy said, and slammed the flat of his hand against the door. Then he began to sort through his keys, meaning to go into the restraint room and continue the chase. Dean came down the corridor after him, deliberately walking slow in order to get his emotions under control. Part of him wanted to laugh at Percy, he told me, but part of him wanted to grab the man, whirl him around, pin him against the restraint room door, and wail the living daylights out of him. Most of it, of course, was just being startled. Our job on E-Block was to keep Rumpus to a minimum, and Rumpus was practically Percy Wetmore's middle name. Working with him was sort of like trying to defuse a bomb with somebody standing behind you and every now and then clashing a pair of cymbals together. In a word, upsetting. Dean said he could see that upset in Arlen Bitterbuck's eyes, even in the president's eyes, although that gentleman was usually as cool as the storied cucumber. And there was something else, as well. In some part of his mind, Dean had already begun to accept the mouse as, well, maybe not as a friend, but as a part of life on the block. That made what Percy had done and what he was trying to do not right. Not even if it was a mouse he was trying to do it to. And the fact that Percy would never understand how come it wasn't right was pretty much the perfect example of why he was all wrong for the job he thought he was doing. By the time Dean reached the end of the corridor, he had gotten himself under control again, and knew how he wanted to handle the matter. The one thing Percy absolutely couldn't stand was to look foolish, and we all knew it. "Coises, foiled again," he said, grinning a little, kidding Percy along. Percy gave him an ugly look and flicked his hair off his brow. "Match your mouth, Four Eyes." "I'm riled." "Don't make it worse." "So it's moving day again, is it?" Dean said, not quite laughing but laughing with his eyes. "Well, when you get everything out this time, would you mind mopping the floor?" Percy looked at the door. Looked at his keys. Thought about another long, hot, fruitless rummage in the room with the soft walls while they all stood around and watched him, the chief and the prey, too. "I'll be damned if I understand what's so funny," he said. "We don't need mice in the cell block, we got enough vermin in here already, without adding mice." "Whatever you say, Percy," Dean said, holding up his hands. He had a moment right there, he told me the next night, when he believed Percy might just take after him. Bill Dodge strolled up then and smoothed it over. "Think you dropped this," he said, and handed Percy his baton. "An inch lower, you would have broken the little bastard's back." Percy's chest expanded at that. "Yeah, it wasn't a bad shot," he said, carefully reseating his head knocker in its foolish holster. "I used to be a pitcher in high school. Threw 2 no-hitters." "Is that right, now?" Bill said, and the respectful tone of voice, although he winked at Dean when Percy turned away, was enough to finish diffusing the situation. "Yep," Percy said. "Threw 1 down in Knoxville. Those city boys didn't know what hit 'em. Walked 2. Could have had a perfect game if the ump hadn't been such a lagoon." Dean could have left it at that, but he had seniority on Percy, and part of a senior's job is to instruct, and at that time, before coffee, before Delacroix, he still thought Percy might be teachable. So he reached out and grasped the younger man's wrist. "You want to think about what you was doing just now," Dean said. His intention, he said later, was to sound serious but not disapproving. Not too disapproving, anyway. Except with Percy, that didn't work. He might not learn, but we would eventually. Say, 4 Eyes, I know what I was doing, trying to get that mouse. What are you, blind? You also scared the cheese out of Bill, out of me, and out of them, Dean said, pointing in the direction of Bitterbuck and Flanders. So what? Percy asked, drawing himself up. They ain't in cradle school, in case you didn't notice. Although you guys treat them that way half the time. Well, I don't like to be scared, Bill rumbled, and I work here, Wetmore, in case you didn't notice. I ain't one of your lagoons,